Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Monday, April the 24th. I'm Zach Ewing with Jim Derry, coming to you from a special undisclosed location here at Advocate headquarters in Baton Rouge. Got kicked out of my normal studio, so apologize if it's a little backlit, but this is what I could find in a pinch. With me is Jim Derry. We got some breaking news today, Jim, actually, and we'll dive right in. We are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And you can sign up at NOLA.com/Caesars. Lots to talk about with the NFL draft this week and
What's up, Jerry?
NBA playoffs, everything else. Jerry is here. But first of all, we're going to lead with some breaking news, Jim, and that is that the Jets have finally finalized that trade for Aaron Rodgers. They're gonna have their guy.
Yeah, kind of a weird trade if you ask me. I mean, all Aaron Rodgers is worth is basically 2 second-round picks. Just goes to show when we talk about trades and people have unrealistic expectations. You know, I've always heard the different things. Well, you should be able to get a first round for this guy and a first round for that guy. It just goes to show you that when you're making trades, the value of players that are already in the league are not necessarily what everyone thinks they are. Like all the times we heard about trading Michael Thomas, right? What you would get from Michael Thomas? Nothing. Basically nothing. So, I mean, it just goes to prove what we've talked about for years. And, you know, I don't think this is a really good trade for the Packers. It just goes to show that Aaron Rodgers basically said, I'm not playing for you anymore because and they only get 1 second-round pick if he doesn't play 65% of the snaps. So if he gets hurt or something weird happens or whatever, or if he decides to go namaste somewhere in the middle of the season, then they only get 1 second-round pick through the
I think
Packers.
You may have misread that, Jim. I think it's 2 second-round picks if he does not play 65%, and the second of those next year's turns into a first-round pick if he does play.
That is not the way that is definitely not the way that I read it. So I'll defer to what you put. But what I read on Shefty's is that they swap first-round picks, which is meaningless because it's 13 to 15.
2 picks, yeah.
Yeah, so that means nothing. And then they get second round this year and a second round next year if he plays 65% of the snaps. Right?
No, just to confirm, reading Schefter's tweet, it's they swap picks this year. The Packers
Which
get
is nothing.
This year's second rounder, this year's sixth rounder,
Which is
and
nothing.
next year's second rounder. That becomes a first if Rodgers plays 65%.
Okay,
of the plays.
I misread that. So
and just the Jets also get a fifth rounder this year as part of it.
Glad you read that. In other words, so it's a second this year for sure, and it'll probably be a first round next year. Still, I still think that's. I mean, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers here. I'm not sure that's weird. But anyway, it doesn't change what I'm talking about as far as people's expectations toward what players are worth. You're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Now, granted, he's I think 38 years old or whatever, but still, I mean, I just don't think the Packers are getting the value that they should get. I don't think it's the greatest trade for the Packers, but again, they're ready to move on. They think this is the thing to do. The Jets are getting themselves a deal, I think, because they haven't had a quarterback since, Joe Namath? I mean, when's the last time the Jets had a quarterback?
It's been even in the Rex Ryan years when they were good, quarterback was sort of the weak spot of those teams.
Well, we'll talk more about this later on, and you see the odds here and how they've changed. I mean, I got the Jets at 30-1, and I figured this was going to happen then. When all the talk about this is back when the talk that the Jets thought they might get Derek Carr, and I never thought Derek Carr was a good fit with the Jets, even though it seemed like for a while that was the top destination for him, or the Panthers, and the Saints were like third. But back then, you know, when Caesars had a deal, if you make a $50 bet on a future, I think you got like a $25 bet free. So I was basically making a $25 bet. And I wanted to see who I liked best, who I thought was getting the best value. And I thought at the time at 30-1, I thought the Jets were. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl? No. But I think at 30-1, I think that's the best value then. Now that 14-1, that is unbettable. That is ridiculous numbers for the Jets to be 14-1. That is obscenely ridiculous. So
I actually think if there's any value there, you can get to miss the playoffs at plus 125. I still think there's a reasonable chance the Jets miss the playoffs altogether.
I don't disagree.
So
and is that win total? What is that, 9.5?
9.5 minus 125 to the over. Yeah.
I mean, they're in a tough division. So, we'll get to win totals in July. So I can't wait to do those. We've been pretty good the last 2 years. Odds to win AFC East, they're still not better than Buffalo. I mean, I don't think I would bet that. So what does it do for the AFC East? It makes it tougher. I mean, to me, you can make an argument the AFC East and the AFC West is tough too, but you can make an argument that from top to bottom, the AFC East is the toughest division in football. It was pretty close last year, and now I don't think there's a weak team in there. I mean, I think Miami's probably the worst team in the division. Maybe New England.
Yeah, I'd go New England, but that says a lot.
But, yeah, I mean, you're all talking about potential. You could have 4 winning teams in there. I mean, it's possible. So it's going to be a fun division to watch. I just don't know how much better that makes the Jets. They've been on the rise anyway. I don't know. Buffalo's still the king of that division.
Horace is here. Good afternoon to Horace. Jerry makes a good point. Just glad the Saints signed Derek Carr before this drama happened.
Yeah,
The Saints don't have to worry about it. And that's kind of the theme of today's show a little bit as we glance at the rest of the headlines. We're going to talk a lot about the draft. Obviously, it's coming up in 3 days. We're as sure as you can get without it having happened yet that Bryce Young will be the number 1 pick. So the draft is going to hinge. Nobody knows what's going to happen at number 2, who the Texans will take or if they'll trade out of that spot. Elsewhere, we've got golf, Davis Riley, Nick Hardy, kind of surprise winners of the Zurich Classic. You could have gotten them at 60-1 early in the week. I think it was like 45-1 by the time the tournament started, but kind of a long shot winner there.
You could have got them at 12-1 through about 9 holes yesterday, which really ticks me off because I almost did it and didn't.
It looked like all the world it was going to be Sungjae M, Keith Mitchell, or the leaders Bo Hostler and Wyndham Clark, and instead, yeah.
Oh, by the way, these headlines, you're missing a headline.
What am I missing?
The New Orleans Breakers are 2-0.
Oh, God. Yeah, I had a feeling
Where is
that was going to come up. The New Orleans Breakers are I think, equal the second favorite to win the USFL. They got Birmingham next week, right?
Yeah, big game. You really?
Yeah,
and no joke.
I know these things.
Well, I'm glad you're paying attention. I watched a little Australian rules football this weekend.
We got NBA playoffs tonight too, Jim. We do have important things to talk about. Bucks and Grizzlies, couple of top seeds, down 2-1 on the road for Game 4 tonight. Going to be in real trouble if they lose tonight. But most of the time, we're going to be talking about drafts. We're going to be talking about the quarterback. And it's a good time to remind you that we are going to be live during the draft. It's actually 7 p.m. next Thursday. We'll probably come on the air a few minutes before 7. So, maybe 5 to 7. The draft starts at 7 o'clock Central Time, not 7 o'clock Eastern, which is what I thought when we first did this. But that's our regular Bayou Bets on Thursday. Instead of
what you're saying is
4,
that I need extra cushion for my seat, is what you're saying.
We will be on for 4 hours plus. We're going to have some food on the air. We're going to do all that kind of stuff. Subscribe to the channel. We're even talking about doing a giveaway, which we're not quite ready to announce yet. But if you are subscribed to the channel and you tune in to Thursday's show, we're going to be doing a giveaway during that show or shortly after it, and you could get some pretty good swag. So tune in for that. Subscribe to the channel.
I have an important question. Can we drink on the air during the show?
Absolutely yes.
Okay,
if you can't drink during the draft, when else can you drink?
So I'm going to trade in my Fresca for something a little more heavy.
If there are any local breweries that want to sponsor the show, we will gladly show off the labels of what we're drinking.
On the
by
air.
the way, just let me know. Ewing at theadvocate.com. Same thing with food, by the way. I'll gladly have you cater the food, and we'll talk about how good it is.
We'll eat your food and we'll drink your drink, no matter what drink it is. Whiskey, vodka, beer, whatever it may be.
Just let us know.
Yeah,
I'll even drink non-alcoholic beer for the brand. I'm not above that.
I don't think I've had a drink since I rode in Endymion. It's probably because I had too many that night.
Well, then you're gonna have to. Yeah, you're gonna have to go take it easy the first couple hours on Thursday.
Nah, you don't want me to take it easy. You want me to be fun by the time the Saints pick.
But we will be live at 7 o'clock all the way through the Saints pick. We're gonna have live updates from Saints headquarters. It's gonna be tons of fun. So check it out, 7 o'clock, these same social media channels. Speaking of the Saints, by the way, we asked y'all last week, what position will the Saints draft first? And this poll is still open on bet.nola.com. We're going to keep it open all the way through Thursday. Defensive lineman still winning. It has slipped a little bit. I personally am starting to go, and we'll talk more about this, but I'm personally starting to lean offensive line.
I think it's gonna be a wide receiver in the first round. I want him to take a running back personally, but I don't want him to reach either. So that might be better for second or third round. But I think they're going to take a wide receiver. That's my prediction at the moment. I don't think they're going to take defense. I really don't. I know that's the odds-on favorite, and it's not as big of a favorite as it was because I think it's plus 120 now. But I think they're going offense. I think they should go offense. And so defensive lineman at plus 120 basically tells you it's 50-50 whether it's offense or defense. And that wasn't the case about a week ago. So,
yeah, it's moving. It's interesting, and you know what? We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other poll we have up on bet.nola.com, this week's poll, is who will the second quarterback drafted be in Thursday's first round? We know Bryce Young, or we're almost, unless Bryce Young's arm falls off between now and Thursday, he will be the Panthers' choice at number 1. So your second QB drafted, will it be CJ Stroud, who was the favorite to be number 1 for a while? Will it be Will Levis, who seems to be getting all the momentum? Could Anthony Richardson still pop up? Yeah, Will Levis. Or could something happen to Bryce Young and he's not the number 1 pick, and then the Texans do have him? I'm sure Gabe would love that. But that's our choice for you. And that launches us into a good discussion here, Jim, because the number 2 pick is really where this draft hinges. And I think a lot of people just assumed when news came out that, hey, the Panthers are going to take Bryce Young number 1. Well, CJ Stroud was he's the number 2 pick, right? It just makes sense. But he's not. I mean, he's 5-1 to be the number 2 pick. Will Levis has all this momentum. You got defensive players, edge rushers, Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson. I got to say I'm surprised at this, but again, you listen to what the odds tell you the Texans are going to do.
By the way, you did not read the poll question, I take it, because that's not what the poll question is. The poll question is...
Poll question, right?
I don't think
I don't think you read the slide right. Second quarterback draft.
Oh, okay. All right. I was reading the other slide. Sorry. The slide that was over. That's what I was reading.
Yeah, these we're just launching into this discussion now. Yeah.
Second misunderstanding for me of the day. I'm slipping. Look, I think the Texans, if they do any one of the 3 that I'm about to say, they need to have their heads examined, and they can realize why they stink and have stunk. They need to either pick CJ Stroud, assuming Bryce Young's gone, by the way, pick Will Anderson, or trade their pick. They do any one of those 3, anything other than those 3 things, they can just plan on losing and going 4-13 for the next, 3-4 years, because they're idiots. First of all, you're in this position because you're not any good. Okay. Second of all, they keep coming into this position. They used to be mediocre to decent, and they've slidden into irrelevant. And if they want to remain irrelevant, then do anything other than the 3 things if you take Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, which I don't think they're going to do, or even Tyree Wilson, stop reading whatever maybe they're reading mock drafts or whatever and how they're rising and blah, blah, blah. If they do anything other than those 3 things, they deserve to be 4-13 for the next half decade.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think, and we'll get to this at the end of the show with our rants, but these teams tend to overthink this situation. I like DeMeco Ryans. I think he's going to be a successful head coach. I don't know how much say he has in this versus Nick Cassiero, the GM. I still think there's a decent possibility the Texans trade this pick, and I don't think that's a bad option either. If you don't like CJ Stroud, fine. Don't reach for someone else. Either take Will Anderson or trade the pick.
Yeah, I agree.
And go pick at number 7, and maybe you get Jalen Carter or wherever you end up picking.
It's not like they don't have a lot of needs.
That's right. They need a lot of things. And by the way, if you can bolster your team, maybe you don't get that much better, but you do get some pieces in place, and you go 4-13 again, and you pick in the top 3 next year. There's a couple of quarterbacks you might be interested in this time next year too.
Maybe I should have changed the way I said it too. Anyone who picks in the second slot, whether it's Houston or someone they trade to, if they take anyone other than CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, then they're crazy. Then you're wasting your pick to trade up to do this. I mean, I love when teams get desperate and start doing stupid stuff, and we see it every year, and you just shake your head and laugh. I mean, how many years have we seen the Jets do just dumb things in the draft over and over and over again? I mean, the Saints do dumb things in the draft too. I mean, I remember how long ago was it they drafted Peyton Turner in the first round?
2019, right?
In 2015, Andrus Pete. We had this big mock. We're doing this draft show, and it kind of breaks off of something we did in 2015, where Jim Rapier and I did an entire draft show, and we had this big whiteboard behind us, and all these picks and potential picks. And Andrus Pete was like somewhere in small, written small as a last minute.
He was like
thing.
In the margins.
Yeah, right. Let me fit him in just in case. They're not going to take him, but sure enough, they took Andrus Pete, and then all these other players on the board still, and they didn't take any of them. It was just a crazy, weird draft. And then they had a second first round pick, and I don't even know if people are going to remember this name. And it's just 8 years ago. With their second first round pick, they're going to take this guy, they're going to take this guy. They took Stephon Anthony from Clemson. Does anybody remember Stephon Anthony? No. I mean, I think I remember that name. You don't even hardly remember the name. That's because he was a bum. And so teams do dumb things during the first round. The Saints do. Almost everyone does. I mean, you don't see the Patriots do a lot of dumb things on draft day. That's why they win a lot. But
they took Mac Jones. They traded up to take Mac Jones a couple years ago.
I'm still not sold that he's not gonna be a good quarterback.
Okay, here's my question though, Jim. When I look at these odds, and maybe Will Levis ends up being a good quarterback. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. Sometimes these guys surprise. Like, not a lot of people knew who Patrick Mahomes was on draft night. It does happen. I mean, I shouldn't say people didn't
trying to get him, and Andy Reid snatched him.
And I'm not saying no one knew who he was. Obviously, we all know who Will Levis was. But I don't think in the middle of Patrick Mahomes' final season at Texas Tech, people were looking at him and going, "Oh God, my team's got to go get that guy." Just like they weren't thinking that about Will Levis.
Andy Reid.
So, there are some of these quote unquote reaches that end up looking good. So I don't know about Will Levis. My question when I look at these odds is, why does everyone suddenly hate CJ Stroud? We were just talking offline about how CJ Stroud was the favorite to not only be the number 2 pick, he was a pretty heavy favorite, minus 180, to be the number 1 pick, not even a month ago. And so now he's and look, we can go to number 3. Let's go to 3. He's not even the favorite to be the number 3 pick. Let's go to number 4. He's not even the favorite to be the number. And now he'd probably go somewhere in here, but he's
the Colts are going to take him.
Why does everyone hate CJ Stroud?
I don't know, but first off, don't ever, and I mean ever, put Will Levis and Patrick Mahomes in the same sentence ever again. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing. You've done a lot of crazy things, but that's probably the most ridiculous thing. I don't get it. I joke about Ohio State quarterbacks, but I actually think CJ Stroud has a chance to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. And I certainly, without question, think he's better than. You notice the talk on Anthony Richardson has kind of died down. You don't even see him on any of these lists now. People are starting to realize who he is. And I
think he's here number 4. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Could go number 4. Yeah.
If CJ Stroud goes after Levis and Richardson, then you'll want me to be drinking on draft night, because that's beyond obscene. That's ridiculous. I mean, CJ Stroud is so much better than either one of these guys. And we can run this tape back one day, because that's ridiculous.
The theory bouncing around about CJ Stroud is that these quarterbacks have all taken what's called the S2 test. Yeah. And it is basically an aptitude and decision-making test that purportedly determines whether athletes can make decisions in split seconds, how fast they process information, how fast they make decisions. I mean, the sort of things that would make it like you want your quarterback to be able to do this. Supposedly, Joe Burrow tested very highly on this test. Patrick Mahomes, very high on this test. Brock Purdy, very high on this test. Just to give a guy who wasn't drafted real high, Josh Allen was very high on this test. So now this is what the guy who developed the test says. He's a Vanderbilt guy. So what the hell he knows about NFL quarterbacks, I don't know.
Nothing.
Jay Cutler went to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much stock you put in this, but Bryce Young's S2 aptitude score was in the 18th percentile. 18th, which means he basically is worse than every other quarterback in this draft. Bryce Young, by the way, the highest score ever. He scored a 98 out of 99. He's in the 99th percentile. And that's why somebody's going to take him number one at 5'10". Looking at some other guys, Will Levis was the 93rd percentile. Anthony Richardson, 79th percentile. Jake Haener from Fresno State, 96th percentile. CJ Stroud, 18th percentile. 18th. Hendon Hooker, 46th percentile.
What's on this test? Trig questions?
I don't.
I mean, they're asking about 14th century Europe. I mean, what are they asking on this test?
It's supposed to determine your decision-making quickness and ability.
Says who?
So they tracking multiple objects, decision complexity, and improvisation. I'm looking at the
Sounds
website.
like geometry.
So I mean, I don't know exactly what's on the test. I have no idea how I would do at it. I personally don't think I'd be a very good NFL quarterback because I freeze up in Madden if the routes have more than like 4 guys. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to throw this guy.
X. Hit X.
Right. And so I wonder if, is that how CJ Stroud? But the funny thing is you watch CJ Stroud, watch him against Georgia in the Peach Bowl. He was fantastic. And there were some times when he did not make the obvious choice. It wasn't like he has good receivers, but Georgia's got an NFL secondary as well. He was making good decisions. That's part of what you get with him. So I don't understand, is this test scaring everybody apart? But again, he's not even the favorite to go number 2, 3. He's not the favorite for any of these spots. I mean, I assume he'll go somewhere in the top 4. By the time you get to pick number 5, we're looking at mostly
the Colts draft 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's not going past that. I would be just floored. Look, here's the thing, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't need any social media hate, but there are a lot of dumb quarterbacks in the league right now. There are a lot of dumb, in my opinion, there are dumb quarterbacks that have at least made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, no offense, but how smart do we think Joe Namath was? I mean, he won a Super Bowl.
How many drinks has he had?
I mean, exactly. I mean, I don't care about a damn test. I want to know what the guy does on the field. I mean, Ohio State doesn't necessarily run the most simplest offenses in the world. I mean, I think he did just fine. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Now, Bryce Young, I never understood the whole thing of him going before Bryce Young because there's Bryce Young is number 1, CJ Stroud is number 2, way below that, and then you can do whatever you want for 3 and 4. I don't care. But there's a big distance between 1 and 2. But I think there's a big distance between 2 and 3. So I don't care how he did in some stupid test. Look, I wouldn't pass that test. And I don't care. I mean, you either have it or you don't. And I think he has it. And I think he's going to be a decent NFL quarterback. And I certainly think he's better than any one of the other 2 that people are talking about. And if somebody wants to go draft Will Levis with the 2nd pick, who I think is going to be an absolute bust, then go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see it. But the odds, again, we always tell you, look at the odds, don't look at mock drafts.
You know what? I'm not betting on that though. I can't. I
think,
can't bet on stupidity. I really can't.
I think the uncertainty with these odds, because you see minus 150, but you see 2 other guys who are 20% implied probability or better. I think there's still a chance the Texans trade this pick, and when you have that, that's when you get the uncertainty of, well, depending on who's picking there, this pick could be different.
I think there's a chance they trade the pick, but I really think the value, if you want to take value, it's that the Texans keep the pick, and I think they're going to go Will Anderson here. I really do. I don't think they're super desperate at quarterback. I think they need one, but I think if I were picking, I would pick Will Anderson. And I'm not just saying that because I don't always say, the value is who I would pick. I do think that in this case, though, and I know Tyree Wilson is shooting up draft boards. We're going to get into that later. But if I was making the pick and if I'm looking for value, I think they stay at number 2, and I think they take Will Anderson.
All right. So later on, of course, in the first round, the Saints will make their pick. We talked a little bit about this with our poll results. But you think, well, let's go back to this. You think it'll be a wide receiver? You think it'll be an offensive skill position, Jim?
I think it's either going to be offensive lineman or wide receiver. And I don't think they can go wrong either way. If they take, first of all, if they take anything that's not on this list of 4, I will be floored, and there's been some talk of rumblings of quarterback, and I know quite a few people, and people have been talking on social media. Hendon Hooker. I mean, it's the Derek Carr haters mostly. And there are a few people who, for some reason or other, love a soon to be 25-year-old quarterback with a torn ACL. That's a great move to take with your first round pick. When you spend all this money on a quarterback that's tied up for 4 years, that would be a wonderful move. Take a quarterback in the first round. That would be sheer brilliance. So I don't see the Saints Brain Trust doing that.
I don't get that, but I will say that 2 weeks ago, quarterback was 20-1 to be their first position picked, and now it's 8-1. So somebody somewhere thinks there's a chance. I just can't even.
Somebody with a lot of money knows some Yahoo who works for some Yahoo in the Saints facility and says, it's possible we take a quarterback. And so the guy with a lot of money, or the gal with a lot of money, probably put $2,000 on quarterback at 20-1, and that shifted the odds because they don't have anything better to do with their money. The Saints are not taking a quarterback in the first round, and if they do, you'll definitely want to see me Thursday around 10:30 or 10 or whatever the hell time it is, because I'm going to be going off. If they take a quarterback in the first round, I will be going off, and there will be a special datitude on Friday morning or whenever the hangover's done.
It would be maybe the most stunning draft pick in Saints history, and that says a lot.
Be worse than Sean Knight or Russell Erxleben.
Wow, worse than Russell Erxleben. This is the correct time now. Bayou Bets live 7 p.m. Thursday. Check it out. We'll be live during the draft. I'm actually kind of hoping the Saints take a quarterback now, just because the world will burn if that happens, or at least New Orleans will. And starting with Jim Derry's studio. Yeah. It's interesting. I look at these odds.
I'll be madder than Gabe Henderson.
If the Texans take Will Levis, yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting. I think I would just bow out and let y'all two talk in studio and complain to each other all night if that happened. I'll tell you why I'm leaning offensive lineman, and it's because I think the first 20 picks or so of this draft are going to be littered with 4 to 5 quarterbacks.
I agree.
I think there's going to be 4 to 5 defensive linemen. Yeah, I think there's going to be 3 to 4 wide receivers, a running back, a tight end, a couple of corners. And all of a sudden, you're going to be looking at pick number 29, and there's only going to be 2 or 3 offensive linemen off the board, and you're going to get a pretty darn good player.
You mean an offensive lineman that might normally go 12 or 14 in another year?
Right.
Slips to 29.
And maybe he's 12 or 14 on the Saints board.
Especially if it's one of the top 2 guards or something like that. And there aren't a lot of guards in this draft. So if one of those guards falls, I could definitely see that. Because we all know that Andrus Peat is on his last leg, and I don't mean that to be funny. Or maybe I do mean it to be funny. Who knows? Yeah, or maybe it's not funny. But he's close to done, if not done already. And so you can't have enough depth at guard for the Saints can. I think they have, hopefully you can't get, obviously you have to see what Trevor Penning can do. You drafted him in the first round last year. You have to give him a chance there. And you hope that Ramczyk is okay. I mean, he's had some worrisome injuries for 2 years now. But to me, Andrus Peat's the one that is the next to go. And if not, you find a place to fit another guard in, and you can't have enough depth there. I would not have a problem whatsoever if the Saints took a guard in the first round. It's not like interior defensive linemen that are a dime a dozen. Offensive guards are anything but. You have to have a good line. The Saints when they've been successful throughout their entire history, they've had a good offensive line. I mean, I'm not just talking about the Sean Payton days. You can go back to every coach that's ever coached this team. And when the Saints have been a good team, it's because they've had good offensive lines, even all the way back to Jim Mora.
I mean, to me, every good team in the NFL, 90% of them have a great offensive line. Like that's where this starts.
Look at Philly last year.
Yeah, exactly. Philly was better than they probably should have been if you just look at their skill positions.
100%.
Offensive line and defensive line. And that's where, like, to me, the Saints, yes, could they use a wide receiver? Sure. Do they need a running back? Yes, they do. Should they spend a first round pick on those? And certainly not on quarterback. I don't think that's the need is the depth on the offensive or defensive lines. And to me, the way this draft looks, you're more likely to get a top 15 to 20 player picking an offensive lineman than you are a defensive lineman. The other possibility we haven't discussed, Jim, could the Saints, and they don't do this often, and we'll talk a lot about this during our show Thursday night, but could they potentially trade down pick up a couple of extra second and third round picks and increase that depth without getting a marquee player.
The reason why I don't think they'll trade down is because they've already traded to get in the first round in the first place. If the trade is right and they can get the right value for it, maybe. But I think a lot of trading up and down had to do with Peyton. I think they have a need in mind, and their board is pretty solid right now. And if they can get one of the guys on their board, I don't see them trading up. They could. I would be surprised. So I think it's probably a 70% chance they just stay at 29, unless there's somebody they really want, like, and they decide to move it to like 26 or something. But I doubt it. I think 29 is where they're going to pick.
The one guy I'll say, if I can play GM, Bijan Robinson, I'm in love with that guy. And if for some reason he
falls like 19,
19 to 22 range, so, like, I'm thinking hard about trying to make a move up.
Yeah.
Maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba, the wide receiver. I don't think either one of them will be around that long. If not,
don't we have enough Ohio State receivers?
Can you ever? They've all been good. At least when they first get here, they've all been good. I've
had enough of Ohio State.
But I do. You said they may not trade back because they traded it. They didn't give up draft capital to get into the first round.
No.
They gave up Sean Payton.
Yeah.
So maybe they do turn it into a couple, like an extra second and an extra third.
It would be apropos to trade up with the pick you got from Sean Payton, because Sean Payton loved to trade up. So it would be apropos if you did. But we'll be on it all night long. I just don't see there's any. Look, the Saints have needs, but they don't have any like super need except for a running back, in my opinion. I think we talk about defensive linemen and again, those are things you can get other times elsewhere. To me, the only thing you would trade up for is Bijan Robinson. That is the only thing you would trade up for. Now, they'll trade up and get CJ Stroud because I said that. But I just don't think that. To me, that's the only thing you would trade up for if you're the Saints. And again, if he makes it down to 18, 19, 20, and you're like, good Lord, what's going on? Then maybe you do make a move with someone. Other than that, I think they stay put.
All right, so we will be all about that 7 o'clock Thursday night. Check it out. Same channels that you're watching now, or subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel, because when you are on that list of subscribers, you might have a nice giveaway coming your way. We're still hammering out details, but we will know more by Thursday's show, so tune in for that. A couple of other things to wrap up the show today. One of them is the college football spring games over for the year. For the most part, there might be one or two stragglers coming this Saturday. LSU's was last Saturday. Colorado's was last Saturday. And Deion Sanders had 10 players enter the transfer portal at Colorado since Saturday's spring game. That's in addition to the 10 or 12 who had already entered the transfer portal. Now, he's gotten 10 back.
Including Juwan Johnson, who went to Lafayette Christian.
Yep. He has completely revamped that roster already. Now, it's interesting if you look at Caesars doesn't have it up right now, but their win total for Colorado started at 4.5, went up to 5.5, and now it's back down to 4.5. He doesn't have a quarterback who's made more than 20 attempts in his college career on that roster. So your guess is as good as mine. What the hell that team's going to look like?
Not bettable. That's what I would say. It's hard to pay attention to what's going on over there right now because Colorado, frankly, is irrelevant, even though they have Coach Prime. And here's the thing. We kind of talked about this in pre-production. I liken Coach Prime a little bit to Bobby Knight. He's going to coach with an iron fist, and it's his way or the highway. And he's going to be tough on these players. And there are far fewer players today that respond to that type of coaching than back when Bobby Knight was coaching. And so he's going to eventually get his type of team there, and assuming they give him a long enough leash, and I think they will, I don't think this is just some act. I don't think that this is, Colorado trying to get eyes on them. I think that Deion Sanders actually is going to do a good job wherever he ends up landing. Whether if they give him 3-4 years, I think he's going to turn Colorado back into relevant, because I do think he's going to get recruits that will play under his style, that will want to play his style of ball. There's a lot of players who don't, and you know what? That it is because we're a soft society. That's a whole nother topic for the summer or whenever or whatever, however you want it to. But that's the truth. Kids are soft today, and they're not gonna. A lot of them don't want to play for a hard-nosed coach, and that's what Coach Prime is. And you know, when he gets the 80 or 90 kids that he wants to have on his team, and the 30, 35 starters and rotating guys in, they're going to be pretty good, and I think they'll be relevant again sooner rather than later.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't know about the overarching. Oh, kids are soft these days. I will say I think that he's going to have a better success rate with a certain type of kid, a kid who can take that type of criticism. I'm reading Seth Davis' book about Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and that magical '79 championship game. Larry Bird was not a coach who he briefly was at Indiana under Bob Knight. And one point the book makes is like, there is no way, even if he hadn't been homesick and had the initial run-in with Bob Knight, it would not have worked under Bob Knight. He was not that type of guy. He was not going to respond to that type of coaching. It wouldn't have worked. And I think the same thing with Deion. He's going to need to get the kind of kids who work under him, and then the success will come. I doubt that that's this year. So a little closer to home, Jim, LSU spring game, Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier both looked terrific. They were like a combined, I'm trying to get the numbers from memory, but like 15 of 19 for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns or something like that in the spring game. I mean, Daniels' numbers were slightly better, but he also is playing with the first team offense. Daniels is a starter, but if Brian Kelly can keep Nussmeier around, the transfer portal is still open right now. Nussmeier could conceivably transfer anytime still, but if he can keep them both around, that's a coup not only for this year in case Daniel should get hurt again, but then you go into 2024 with a bona fide QB1 and Garrett Nussmeier as well.
I agree. And by the way, ask Mike Krzyzewski or Isaiah Thomas how Bobby Knight worked out for them. I think they were just fine.
Certain type of kid.
Exactly. And it turned out pretty well for them. I think we talked about this, and I agree 100%. Look, Nussmeier is not going to be a starter on this team, but he is certainly going to see playing time, and you have to have 2 good quarterbacks in college, I think. Jaden Daniels, to me, is a Heisman candidate, and a lot of people might laugh at that, but I really think that he has the potential to be that this year. And I think that LSU is a value at plus 1,400. Georgia's the favorite, but look, they lost a lot this year. Now, if you look at who they've been and whether they're going to be as good again, I think they're going to have a tough time being as good as they've been. So I think this is the perfect year for LSU to take that step and be the surprise team, maybe like they were in 2019. So do I think they're going to win the national championship? No, but I do think they're a 10-win team, and I do think with a little bit of luck and winning the right games that they could be that kind of team, and barring any injuries. I think the offensive lines took a major step from September to December, and I think they're going to do that again. And I think Jaden Daniels, again, I think he's going to be a Heisman candidate. I liked the Brian Kelly hire when they hired him. And so, and look, if he goes down, you need a quarterback like Nussmeier that can pick up the slack and come in and pick up where you left off, and I think he can do that. We're going to learn a lot about LSU early in the season, especially because they play a team that's right below them in these odds, and that's Florida State, and they play them over there. I believe the game, is it in Tallahassee or is it in?
It's in Orlando.
It's in a neutral site, Orlando. Okay,
yeah.
Fairly a Florida neutral site, just like it was in the Dome this past year. So we'll learn a lot about LSU early because I think Florida State is going to be really good as well. And Florida State, I think, is going to end up in the top 10. LSU should be in the top 10. So what a game that'll be to start off.
I'm going to point in another direction here. I don't mind LSU. I think that number is a little low. I think they overachieved somewhat last year, and so to ask them to overachieve again is difficult for me. I'm going to the team that's right there equal with them, and y'all can laugh because it's a Pac-12 team, but USC,
here we go
with the Heisman Trophy winner coming back, if they can get that defense fixed at all, they're going to put up a ton of points. And the Pac-12 can be a positive because you don't have anybody who you have to, we're going to have to go through who? Oregon, I guess, UCLA, Utah, like those teams are all beatable. And if Caleb Wilson is capable of Caleb Williams, excuse me, not Wilson. I knew I was saying that wrong. Caleb Williams is healthy again, and you can get that defense even 25% better that's a national championship contender at 14-1.
Well, here's the thing. I think they'll have an excellent chance to make the playoffs, but they'll be Oklahoma type to get in and get bombed. They're just, I mean, they don't have the talent to compete with the big boys. I mean, here's their schedule to start off: San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, Arizona State, Colorado. They're going to be 5-0 playing Arizona, probably win that. I mean, Notre Dame, Utah, they'll probably lose one of those games just because they're supposed to win. Actually, the back half of their schedule is pretty tough. Notre Dame, Utah, Cal, Washington, Oregon, and UCLA.
Yeah, it's very tough to finish.
It's easy to get rung up by one of those schools, but I mean, come on, USC. I'm not putting any money. I don't think that's a value. Their odds are already inflated because they're USC. I actually think Florida State would be a better choice because if they could somehow beat LSU early, I think the ACC's more winnable than the Pac-12. Because
I think either of those ACC teams at 18. Clemson, hey, doesn't this just feel like one of those years where Dabo has a team out of nowhere?
No, I think Clemson's done as far as being up there, at least for the near future. We'll see. I don't know. But again, I think whoever wins the SEC is obviously the favorite, and I think LSU has a decent chance to win the SEC, and whoever wins the SEC automatically becomes, I don't know what, 1.5 to 1, if that.
Maybe even.
Win.
Maybe even money.
So, I mean, do you think LSU is going to be 14 to 1 to win the SEC? I think that's a great value. I really do. So
I think those odds are out. Actually, let's look them before we move
like
on
9
real quick.
or 10 to 1 to win the SEC.
Let's see. SEC winner at Caesars. LSU is 6 to 1 to win the SEC.
6 to 1. So then that gives me even more value because if you win the SEC, you should be better than. So doing my simple math, that puts you at somewhere 2.2, 2.3 to 1. If you correlate those numbers, I think you're getting great value in LSU. I really do. So I probably will put a few bucks on it. I think this is the year where someone other than Georgia or Alabama, and look, I was reading some social media stuff about Alabama and their spring game, and the fans are like, oh my God, this team is terrible. Now, they're Alabama terrible, which is different than a lot of other teams.
Which means they'll be number 6 instead of number 1.
Exactly. But they're complaining, we don't have a quarterback, and you don't have Bryce Young. I mean, you don't have Mac Jones. I mean, you don't have a quarterback compared to what you've had. That doesn't mean you won't have a quarterback. So, again, take it with a grain of salt, but the Alabama fans are not happy right now, which tells me that the SEC could be wide open. I don't really see any other team in the SEC West that's going to compete with LSU. I mean, Ole Miss will probably be a challenge again just because they're, I don't even like that guy. But Ole Miss will be better. Again,
Texas A&M bounce back.
I don't think so. I think they're a mess. But maybe.
Some breaking news from Daniel Berry here. Ime Udoka hired by the Rockets. Interesting hire. He was the Celtics coach who took him to the finals last year and then got fired. Off-court controversy.
That's a good hire.
Good segue for us into our last segment too about the NBA playoffs. Tonight's games, as we mentioned at the top, I think it's only been 3 times since the field expanded in the NBA playoffs to 16 teams. Only 3 times has a number 1 or number 2 seed lost in the first round. And both the Bucks and the Grizzlies are down 2-1 on the road for Game 4 tonight. So really interesting. The Grizzlies are dogs, could fall behind 3 games to 1, and that's the interesting one. Dillon Brooks gets ejected from Game 3. The Grizzlies actually got back in the game. Ja Morant was terrific getting them back in the game, but they got run out of the arena 35-9 at the end of the first quarter. Didn't have a chance. But Jim, I get the feeling you still think the Grizzlies have a run in them here.
I do. I think they're the better team. I think I know they haven't in the last month or so, but I keep waiting for the Lakers to turn back into Lakers. And that was pretty dumb for the Grizzlies to be running their mouths and fire up LeBron. It obviously fired up Anthony Davis too, because he looked like he felt like playing the other day. So I don't know. I still think the Grizzlies are the better team. I think they're going to find a way to win the series, and I would be very surprised if the Bucks don't win their series with the Heat. I thought that one would be a struggle even before I knew about Giannis being out, because the Heat is just a pain in the ass. That's just who they are, and they're very well coached and always have been. So look, I think they're both going to be fun series. It wouldn't surprise me if either or both of these series went to 7 games, but I still think the Bucks and the Grizzlies find a way to come out of it.
Series price, by the way, still has the Bucks at -300, Lakers at -320. You can get the Grizzlies at +250. One interesting point on that: Ja Morant last year, Grizzlies played the Warriors in the second round. Ja Morant gets hurt in a game the Grizzlies lost by 30 some odd points. They turn around, lost the next game by 3, then won a game by 39 points in Memphis, and then lost by 12 or something to end the series. This year, he's missed one playoff game. The Grizzlies won that playoff game. In the 2 that he's played, they've gotten blown out both times. So Ja Morant's a very fun player, and he puts up a lot of statistics. Is it possible that for whatever reason, defensive rotations, substitution patterns, attitude, I don't know. Is it possible the Grizzlies are just better without him? Bill Simmons he calls it the Ewing theory after Patrick Ewing, that, a team is somehow better without its star player. Is that what we're looking at with Memphis here?
No. I mean, no. How could you be better without Ja Morant? They're not better without Ja Morant. I mean, he at one point he willed them and scored I think 10 or 11 straight points and got them back to within. I don't think they were ever back in the game per se, but back to within a point early in that fourth quarter, I think, where it looked like this could get interesting, and I don't think anyone thought that in the first half. So, in fact, one of the best bets of the entire weekend was when it was 35-9. I think the last score was the Lakers were -21. And I was sorry that I didn't jump on it, and I didn't because I had the kids and I was doing some other things. So I was kind of half paying attention to the game at the same time. But and the only reason why I knew that is somebody told me, and I'm like, damn, I wish I would have paid more attention to it. So that was one of the easier bets of the weekend because you knew they weren't going to finish without coming with something. But no, they're not better without Ja Morant, and I think that's what makes this game even more interesting because I think he's going to have one of his best games. I don't know what his over/under is, but I certainly wouldn't be betting the under on that one tonight.
Yeah, the other one I'll say is Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's going to play for Milwaukee tonight.
They are definitely not better without Giannis.
No doubt about that. And I think Giannis goes off. I think look at what happened in Game 2 after the Heat won Game 1. It was ugly, and I think I'm all over the Bucks tonight. I think it gets ugly again. I don't know.
Why don't they call him the Greek Freak anymore?
I think they still do, right?
I haven't heard that in a while. Has that become socially unacceptable?
I don't think so. Okay. Let's do a Twitter search for Greek Freak and see what happens.
I think we should.
The other thing I'll say is the Grizzlies, by the way, have a better regular season record without Ja Morant as well during his career. Yeah, Greek Freak is. Yeah, there's been plenty of Greek Freak references on Twitter today.
Okay. I haven't heard that.
I just think it hasn't been.
And this isn't part of my, and where I know we're about to go on our rant. So, but here's my rant. Anybody who watched the Kings game against the Warriors yesterday, what's his name? The guy who does play-by. Doris is always great as an analyst, but I can't remember. I'm having a brain cramp. But anyway, every time, and I'm not just making this up. I really don't care. I mean, I have the Kings at 75-1, but it's a $15 bet. I don't care if I lose it. But every time Steph hit a 3, he went insane. It could be I'm talking about they have a 6-point lead in the second quarter, and he drains a 3, and he gets super thrilled. And meanwhile, in the fourth quarter, the Kings started hitting threes to get themselves back into it. No big deal. I mean, De'Aaron Fox hits a couple threes in a row, and he didn't even get loud until that last one when they actually had a chance to win the game, and then he kind of got excited. I can't believe I'm having a brain cramp, but that kind of bothered me.
Is it Mike Breen?
Bit. No, he's pretty good, and the guy that does it is usually good. I can't remember what his name is. I'm gonna have it. It's gonna come to me before the show's over.
Mark Jones. That's it.
Yeah. And again, usually very good. But it kind of bothered me a little bit.
I've never been a huge fan of the Warriors. Really, the first couple of years of this run, I liked them and they were fun, and I just got tired of them pretty quickly. And I just feel like everybody gets. One of the reasons I don't like them is because everybody gets so excited over them.
It's not even that, and that's part. I mean, I know people are probably saying that's part of it. It's really not that. I don't care about the Warriors or not. I love Steph. I think I think he's clearly the best three-point shooter in the history of the game. There's no question about it. But
No
it
doubt.
bothers me when and me as a play-by-play announcer, I know, and like I do, a lot of times I could be contracted by a school, so I'm supposed to be, sort of the homerish kind of announcer. But I get excited when kids from other teams do things, if they do something special. I just don't want to hear that on a national broadcast. You sound like you're almost rooting for the Warriors to win because obviously it's better for your network if they do win. Nobody wants to see the Kings go on. I mean, it's the Kings. It's like going to Delaware. I'm in Delaware. That's what it's kind of like. So I understand that. But when I say nobody, but the general NBA public wants to see the Warriors and just automatically assumes the Warriors and Lakers will move on. Well, we talked about it the other day. I want Kings. Give me some Grizzly. Give me some Nuggets. Give me some Clippers.
Yeah. By the way, these Tuesday spreads super lopsided. I think I'll just take road dogs in all of those. Give me the points. I'll take 2 out of 3 with those points.
You're taking a road your fave tonight. So
yeah, at this point, it's a little it's a little too much for this point of a series. All right, let's get into our rants. Jim, you kind of teased this earlier in the show, but like teams tend to outthink themselves during these 3+ months between the Super Bowl and the draft starting.
Yeah, our colleague Gabe Henderson, we were talking text back and forth. He's the one that had to wear the big L on his face. I think it was something about like that. Yeah. It was a red face with a silver L. In case y'all forgot, but he's a big Texans fan. He lives in Houston, and we were talking this morning. I think he's right. He says there's too much time between the end of the regular season or the end of, I guess, the Super Bowl and when they have the draft, or even the end of the regular season for the teams that stink and lose and they're done January the 8th or whatever day they're done until April, whatever. And then you think about how I don't love everything that the NBA does, but one thing I do like is that they have the draft right after the finals is over, right? They have the lottery during the playoffs, and then they have the draft right after. And you don't have time to outthink yourself. And what if this mock draft is right? What if Mel Kiper Jr., God forsake me, is right about Joe Blow, whatever it is. And I think teams are starting to outthink themselves, and that's why we're seeing guys like Levis move up the board and Anthony Richardson. Oh, my God, he can run. Who cares if he was 52% and threw 98 interceptions in college? It really doesn't matter because he can run. I mean, we're going to move him up our draft board. Forget the guy from Ohio State who probably should have won a national championship. Whatever it is, teams have too much time on their hands. And, guys start moving up draft boards, and all of a sudden they're being picked 4th when a month ago they were going to be picked 28th. So I don't get it. There's too much time. But let's move the draft up into early March. I think it would be even more fun then. I also think that these new players would have more time to get acquainted with their teams. There's no reason not to do it, really, besides the fact that it might interfere with Mardi Gras for some of us. But keep football relevant. You'd be still talking about it. Super Bowl's over. Even have it maybe in late February. It still gives you give yourself 3 weeks to prepare the draft, move on, take the guy you should have taken in the first place. Teams will be better for it. The fans would enjoy it more. And, frankly, I think it would be more interesting and we wouldn't have to talk about it for 2.5 months.
I agree with you. And at the same time, I realize that I also would like World Series games to start at 6 o'clock and not 8:30, and NBA Finals games. And there's a reason that they don't. And that's because TV wants them that way. Yeah. And frankly, the sports world's kind of slow in April, and at least late April. And the NFL figured that out. I mean, the NFL draft used to be like in late January, a week after the Super Bowl. I mean, it was like, right. And it was done via telephone.
And it was 17 So now rounds.
Then it was like early April, and now it's late April. And that's because the NFL knows it can control the calendar. They now will have their schedule release a week after the draft, and they'll control that weekend in May as well. And then we'll be into training camp and mini camp. And all of a sudden the NFL has what it wants. So I agree with you, while at the same time knowing it'll never happen. Early March will never happen. My rant is similar to that. Look, this hype, the byproduct of what you're talking about, too much time, is that we start to get mock draft after mock draft after mock draft, and we get hype, and we get just listen to this quote Anthony Richardson gave to GQ Sports. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. I already know it. I'm going to grind until I'm a Hall of Famer. I appreciate the sentiment, Anthony, but and that should be your goal. Okay, it should be, and I'm not gonna begrudge you that. But we get stories like that from guys like Anthony Richardson, who, frankly, is 100-to-1 long shot to become anything approaching a Hall of Famer. Because we have this hype and this hype machine and these mock drafts and everyone trying to guess what's going to happen, that's something that, quite frankly, is impossible to guess. The website Fantasy Pros did a ranking of mock drafts where they look at how you did projecting a certain player to a slot, a certain position to a team, whether you got the team right for a player, even if it was in the wrong slot. And, they have a point system for doing it. They ranked 164 mock drafts, which, first of all, the fact that that's the number, and I'm sure there's more than that. That's just the ones they got to, is unbelievable that many people did it. And how many out of those 164, Jim, do you think even got half of the possible points?
None.
Okay, 23 did. But 23 out of 164, and that's
it's almost impossible to do to get half, to be
on
honest.
A huge curve. And I'm not even trying to denigrate anybody who's like, oh, what, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying that they're pointless to do, and you should not use them as predictive in quality at all. If you want to read them to know some of the guys who are going to be available or just to dream, fine. I mean, there's all these other things you can do where you can go into your own draft simulator and say, oh, well, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and I'm going to trade the number 1 pick for 6 number 2 picks, and then I'm going to trade my number 2, and you end up with a whole roster from this draft. And it's like, just stop. Yeah. Unless you're doing it just for pure fun, it is not predictive in quality at all. And bottom line, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Nobody likes that answer, but that's what it is, and we're all going to know in about 3.5 days.
I agree with you, but people like reading them, and as long as people like reading them, they're going to keep printing them. So whether it be digitally or with real ink. Do they make things with real ink anymore? I forget. Anyway,
I can look out the window here and see our printing press. So yes.
Okay, well that's good news. Yeah. I guess I probably wouldn't have a job if we didn't do things with real ink. Anyway, and by the way, subscribe to the Advocate. I think it's a really good idea, and the Times-Picayune. But that being said, I just don't. I agree with you. They're worthless. I use the NFL mock simulation database to just kind of to get an idea on where I think a player should go, or because if you take all these idiots and put them together, you have one semi-average smart person. So in that case, that's okay. And I would bet that that's fairly close. But getting a mock draft, I think even half right is probably the equivalent of winning a 7-team parlay. It's a dumb thing to do, but if you do it 500 times, you might win one. So have fun with it. Sure, go ahead.
All right. Saints pick number 29 on Thursday. We will be live with you the entire time, starting at 7 o'clock. And we hope you join us here on these Bayou Bets YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel because we're going to have a giveaway for you as well. So that's all the teasing I can do.
And a quick note, Datitude will be early this week. We're going to have it on Thursday. Jeff Duncan and I will be live at 9:15 a.m. on Thursday. It's going to be a long day for me on Thursday, but that's okay. But we will be talking about pre-draft stuff and what he'll be doing in the war room, what he thinks about the Saints, all that good stuff. So Datitude will be Thursday instead of Friday this week, talking all about Saints. It'll be way more about Saints focus on Saints than it will be on the overall reach of the NFL draft.
And then we will have Jeff Duncan and Luke Johnson and the rest of our Saints team live from Saints headquarters, Taryn Walker, Rod Walker, at times throughout that night during that 7 p.m. show. So we'll be on from 7, I'm going to guess, till about 11:30. So join us. The Saints probably will end up picking somewhere between 10:45 and 11 o'clock if they stay in their slot at number 29.
And sorry, Zach, he really is moving his mouth. I know his screen's been frozen for 3 or 4 minutes, but he's not a ventriloquist. I know some people think you might be a ventriloquist. It's like, we're going to be on at 7 p.m. next time. No, he really is moving his mouth. At least they got you in a nice smile and a nice picture. There.
I'm going to try to do that for 4.5 hours on Thursday night. How about that?
Make sure you have good internet connection that night.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. We'll see you Thursday night, 7 p.m. I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Bayou Bet.